What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to be talking about Skeleton Crew. It's the new Star Wars show. It's on Disney Plus, and it's available with audio description. The first episode was directed by John Watts, and the second episode was directed by David Lowery. They were both presented together, so I'm reviewing them together as like a cohesive pilot. And actually, they're so damn short. The second episode is so short that it almost complements the other one into what would almost be a slightly long, above 1 hour pilot. I think if you put these two together, they run about like an hour 14, which could have just worked as like a little mini movie. Anyway, I mean, yes, there's a little bit of break in time between episode 1 and 2, so it would have been a little clunky to try to put these two together, but when you have one episode that runs like 52 minutes, the next one is like 24 minutes, it's just very odd, and that's with credits, by the way. So if you took the credits out of the first episode, because you wouldn't need to run credits twice, that's why I was coming up with, I was like, I think it'll probably be ish around that time. So, yeah, we've got a new Star Wars show for the internet to tear apart. Those poor unfortunate souls. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're gonna have to wait until I tell you what the show's about first. So, we technically open on pirates, on space pirates. They're raiding another vessel, looking for credits, and it doesn't go so well. And then we jump, and we are suddenly in suburbia. That's the best way to describe that. Where we follow sort of our main kid. He's got a dad, and he's just worried about all the things like a normal kid would be worried about. Getting to school on time, passing his tests, hanging out with his best friend. He's got a crush on a girl in class. I mean, I don't know, they ride bikes. He comes home and he flops on a couch. Uh, there's another girl who's like fixing her bike at home, and her mom is also like working in the government and gives her like her top of the, she's like, I had to go get this for you or whatever. Now don't lose it again. It's like the head of the class badge or something like that for her daughter. I guess she pulled rank, and her daughter is a little bit more of a rebel and clearly doesn't necessarily want to be at the head of the class, so to speak. And what ends up happening is the four main kids here all end up sort of running into this, like what they think is like an abandoned Jedi temple, and exploring it. And lo and behold, there's a spaceship there, and they get on the spaceship and they fly off, and they awaken this robot that's been there for a while, that's left over from the past crew, which is voiced by Jude Law, One Eye Willie. I don't know. I guess is something. Anyway, and it's the Goonies in space. And like literally everyone has said this. They said it before the release. They've been saying after. Imagine the Goonies in space. And the problem with that is Star Wars. This is a Star Wars series. So, there are two sides to this coin before you jump in the comments and be like, he's hating. First of all, I've already seen the people out there who are like, you better not say anything to those kids. They're like they're, I don't trash child actors. I thought it was terrible when Rykir Armstrong was nominated for Worst Actress for Firestarter. She's in this, by the way, so I don't know that I can say anything to Ryan that would be more devastating than her waking up one morning to find out that she was nominated for Worst Actress of the Year when she was like 12 or 10, or I don't know what she was, and for Firestarter. So I don't really know what the hell we could do that is worst, that is better, that is somehow supersedes the fact that the Razzies had to rescind that nomination, then write a rule saying that no person under the age of blank, I don't know what it is, 18, 16, something like that, could be nominated for an individual acting award. So no more child nominees because they got shamed, rightly so, by the way. I actually like the child actors here. They're the one thing that work for me in this show, which leads me to the part A of this, which is what I like about it. We'll start there so that people are like, oh my God, I don't want to lose you. Um, so I like the chemistry between the kids. There's a certain amount of inventiveness and an energy and a vibe here that works. If you remove all of the intent to make it a Star Wars show, it works as a show. If this is not Star Wars Skeleton Crew, if it's just a show called Skeleton Crew that's on Disney Plus, that is set in space, where there's some futuristic colony and these kids travel and they stumble upon a spaceship and they go onto a spaceship and they fly into space and they have to contend with space pirates, that's a fucking show. When you wrap it into the Star Wars universe, it doesn't work. So, I enjoyed the nuts and bolts here, but when you harpoon it and bring it into a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, unfortunately, you've lost everything. And that is where the show struggles. I know some people are really high on this. I think it has like a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. Remember, Rotten Tomatoes is just a thumbs up, thumbs down. And I have to say, if I was a tomato meter critic, even though I'm about to say what I'm about to say, I would still give this a thumbs up. Because at the end of the day, in a pass-fail ratio, this is passable. This is watchable. It's just not great. Like, for the Star Wars world that has been sort of struggling to find its footing on Disney Plus, I don't know that this helps. I don't know that they understand what it is that fans are looking for from Star Wars shows. And I I'm not sure they're finding directors. I think John Watts and David Lowery, and I hear later on that Daniels are doing an episode. These are very inspiring directors who have done some really strong work before. Um, I don't know if any of them ever actually sat down and asked themselves what made Star Wars cool? When we were younger, what did we like about Star Wars? What was it? Because this show and some of the other shows I've complained about space witches, it's like nobody has understood why Star Wars was a hit in the first place. And like we hammered the Phantom Menace for having like pod racing. And now we've got like these kids are like going to school. There's a woman who's like walking her frog dog, like on a leash. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it just feels like we're a long way from that feeling of seeing Luke on Tatooine, for the very first time, that sort of like desert universe type thing, which they even sort of like revisit in Obi-Wan. He feels like he's out in the middle of nowhere. Um, does he go to school? Who knows? I mean, um, all of these kids, it always just sort of feels like they're living like a different life, a somewhat possibly like nomadic life, but they have a very different life than this. And this is just like, what if your world was Star Wars? Uh, I don't know, but unfortunately, Star Wars doesn't play with multiverses, so I can't have that level of fun. At some point, everything that you put into this exists within the realm of the Skywalker saga. So you're telling me that this is in the same world as Yoda and Chewbacca and Darth Vader? I mean, this is in the same world as those characters. And that's where we have a problem. See, Marvel can get away with it because they can say, oh, we're in a multiverse. So this is not the main timeline. So we can do something like Marvel Zombies, which is inherently a stupid idea, but they can do it because they can say, oh, it's sort of like a what if. And then they go into like another, another dimension. We travel. And so It's how like Spider-Verse works so well is because it's pulling like Spider-Pig. Could you imagine if Spider-Pig was like the main pig? Spider-Ham or whatever, like was instead of Peter Parker and he's trying to like team up with the Avengers, it would be ridiculous. It would be absolutely ridiculous. But because they play with multiverses, they can give you something that's like a lark, that's a gag, and they can explore that and it's fun. And you don't have to think too hard about it because there's nothing that dwells sort of in the main timeline that it has necessarily this strong connection to what is in the world as we know it, which is the main sort of Avengers timeline exists in our timeline. Like we are 636. I think that's the number. 636. Marvel fans are going to hate me. I don't know if I got that number wrong. Um, Here, they can't do that, nor have they done that with Star Wars. Everything is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So if this is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, why does it feel like my neighborhood outside? Like, why does this feel like, the kids down the street, like running to catch the school bus? And is this Earth? Which I've thought about, by the way, that this is but then it's still in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So that would mean that our history of Earth would be being rewritten. Like suddenly Earth is being pulled into the Star Wars franchise. So we're maybe not so far, far away anymore. And this is like the early version of Earth. And then that, like, I don't know, asteroid hit and then rebuilt with dinosaurs and got to where we are now and somehow figured out how to reinvent suburbia. You know what I'm saying? Like the things that we did 10,000 years, we're just repeating itself. Like history is doomed to repeat itself. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're trying to do here. But it gets kind of like silly when you realize that the things that made Star Wars cool were the Force, lightsabers, Jedi, Wookiees, Yoda, like Yoda, the weird way that Yoda talked, the practical effects that they were using for these creatures, practical creature effects. John Williams' excellent score. Darth Vader, that signature voice, you know. Quotable lines, "Help me, one, you're my only hope," which is not even Luke, I am your father. I mean, like, there's so many other. They're just everything about that franchise existed in a science fiction world that felt like a comic book that had come off the page. And it really truly felt like a fantasy world. It felt like a world that you couldn't possibly live in. And you wanted to. And you wanted to be in that world. Showing me a world that's literally outside my door and saying, oh, this is in Star Wars too, is not as fun as you would think. Do I have a problem with a Star Wars show with child leads? I do not. I have a problem with a Star Wars show that has child leads that also just doesn't seem to understand. Like, we shouldn't need space pirates. Do you know? Like, that's not. Could you imagine what Darth Vader would do to a space pirate? Like, I mean, realistically, when you're really thinking about it, could you imagine if those space pirates had rolled up on Darth Vader? Like, he would have just death gripped them. It's just like, what are you even doing here? Like a Jedi with a lightsaber. The space pirates are just like, we're here and we got they just get dispatched immediately. It just gets kind of ridiculous. Space witches was stupid. Space pirates are stupid. Space zombies would be stupid. Please don't do that. It's everything that they keep trying. Space. What are we gonna get? Vampires? Are we gonna get like Twilight in the Star Wars universe? Like, I really don't know what's next. It seems to be like they keep thinking that if they keep merging things, eventually we're gonna get Space Avengers. It's gonna be like, ooh, they're in Star Wars, but they have they have superpowers, but it's not the Force. It's Space Batman. I don't like it. Your thing was cool to begin with. You were cool. You know what I'm saying? Like the thing was cool to begin with, and then like Coca-Cola Classic, right? The reason it's classic is because they fucked with the There's New Coke, Diet Coke, Cherry Coke. I mean, they keep messing with the formula. You know what? You know why they're able to do that? Because Coke Classic worked in the beginning. Because people picked up the original thing and they were like, you know what? This is good. I like this. And then ever since then, they've been able to bastardize whatever the hell into wild, I don't know, wild flavors. But um, at the end of the day, the one flavor that always stays constant is Coca-Cola Classic. So, um, and the reason for that is because that was the inspiration for everything else that came after it. And like Coke Classic, Star Wars is still the greatest. New Hope is still where everything began, and it's still the thing that caused people to want to dress up like Luke Skywalker, to dress up like Darth Vader, or put their hair into weird cinnamon bun hairs. I just don't know what Skeleton Crew is going to do. Is it going to inspire kids to do anything? I don't think so. I think this is just like another time waster that we've put out from Lucasfilm on to Disney Plus that really is inconsequential, doesn't resemble anything that came before it, and has very little to do with Star Wars. The Acolyte had a promising beginning to it when you were like, oh my god, who is this figure? And they're fighting a Jedi Master. This is interesting. And then what they ended up doing with it after that just went downhill. So when you have a cool idea, you just have to figure out how to actually make it feel like Star Wars. And bringing in when the kid comes home and he flops down on his couch, when they're sitting outside like the principal's office, I'm just like rolling my eyes. Like every time I'm like, this is not working on any level. But we're here. So I did. The thing is, sitting here, I'm like, am I going to recap the show? How am I going to grade it? Because it bears so little resemblance to Star Wars that you almost can't ignore the fact that it's a Star Wars show and just enjoy something called Skeleton Crew. But I'm worried because they put stuff like Jedi in there, and they were hinting that the main kid wanted he's like, I want to help people. That's what droids are for. Uh, when you basically said you wanted to be a Jedi, I'm like, oh, they're gonna keep doing stuff like that. They don't need to do it. Skeleton Crew is a great idea for a show if you take away the infinitesimal amount of Star Wars that it actually looks like here, because there really are not that many. It's so loosely tied right now. They're trying to grasp at straws. It feels like a show that was independently developed, and they were like, what if this was in Star Wars? um, but it also feels like the same thing could have been made years ago, like sort of maybe as a response to the Goonies. Maybe Disney wanted to do Goonies in space back then, so they paired maybe with the director of Flight of the Navigator, and then they made Skeleton Crew as Goonies in space, but because Goonies was popular, and they were like, well, we could do that. We didn't do it, so we're going to do it. And so they did their own. They could have done this. It feels like that. It feels like something Disney would have made in the like late 80s, early 90s, Honey, I Shrunk the Kid era types, like I said, Flight of the Navigator um, era, before everything was sort of like a sports thing. Because for a while there, they get into like Iron Will, Mighty Ducks, Angels in the Outfield. Everything sort of has like a sports theme behind it. So Big Green. But yeah, there was a period there where, yeah, this would have worked. And I kind of like the fact that it's on Disney because it feels like something Disney would do. But it does not feel like something that Lucasfilm would do. It doesn't feel like something that would tie itself into the Star Wars universe. Um, I get, I can see that we're headed towards an explanation based on the reactions in the second episode that basically they live in some sort of like lost city of Atlantis, essentially, but in space. And that's why everything there is different, is because they live in this place that doesn't exist. To everyone else, they're like, oh, we've always heard about this place, but we never knew it actually existed. which would be why I guess that world is allowed to look completely different, because it's like, well, what if we found Atlantis? Well, what would Atlantis look like? If Atlantis was real and we ever actually found it, what could it possibly look like with people living under the sea? What are the possibilities? Well, apparently it might just look like your neighborhood. I mean, still, there's that element of it. And it could have looked different. You could still make it look different than the rest of Star Wars without trying to make it look like Earth. So, there were like some quirky little changes. There was a girl that had like a fuzzy face. I caught that in the audio description. There was a frog dog. Um, so there were like a couple little things, and the one kid has like a hover bike. The other girl's like working on her bike when the other kid like rolls up on a bike and is like, "Yeah, man, I want to race," and like rolls away. That kid. Um, but it does. It just feels like, I heard John Campea was like, "We can have Star Wars. It feels like it's in St. Louis," and I was like, "No, we can't. Stop." I'm neither a shill for Disney nor do I hate Disney. I'm not on either train. So there's two sides. Like I said, there are two sides to this coin. You're asking me. Uh, well, first of all, the audio description I thought was great. Like I said, a lot of the stuff I picked up on, I really liked. The slurping of the noodles, the cracking of the lobster sized insect over the noodles that the kids were gonna eat. Um, all that stuff really worked, you know. Um, but at the end of the day, it's still a Star Wars show. Like, independently, sure. And that's why I'm saying I may still watch this, and why I'm saying I would give it a thumbs up is because I did actually like the show. I'm frustrated with the fact that they're putting this in the Star Wars universe. It doesn't feel Star Wars at all. It feels, and I wish there was a way for Star Wars people to do multiverse stories, to have a story that was like, well, this is not, but they can't really do that, I mean, because they have the whole universe. It wasn't just Earth, it's not just, so I don't even know how they would explain that this is not in the same timeline. I think somebody even put this like directly like before Andor. So in terms of the timeline, it's like, well, if we know where it fits in the Star Wars timeline, that even ruins it even more, because then I'm like, well, okay, well, so this is after Darth, so the Force exists and they're just, and when you start thinking about all the Star Wars elements of it, it becomes far less interesting than the show that it could be, which could be really fun. So, um, at the end of the day, yeah, this is why things have high Rotten Tomatoes, is because you look at the tomato meter and it has a 94% because 94% of people agree that it's watchable versus not watchable. Um, so, and I would agree with that. I had a fun time. I would say watchable, but proceed with caution. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to give Skeleton Crew episodes 1 and 2. I'm going to give it a B minus. Like I said, independently as a show, there's stuff that I like. I don't like that they're tying it into Star Wars. So unlike The Acolyte, where it like progressively got worse narratively, I feel like this is something where I will actually end up liking it, but then part of me will hate the fact, like the whole time, that this is in the Star Wars universe. Very talented director set to direct future episodes, and I think that's a smart lineup. However, I wish they would find people who had the vision of somebody who remembers watching Star Wars for the very first time, of A New Hope, and understanding what it was that made Star Wars cool back then. Why did you buy those little toys? Why did you have the Death Star for all your action figures to go into? Why did you dress up as Darth Vader for Halloween in the 80s? All that stuff. Those directors. I want those directors to direct Star Wars. I want those directors who really, truly understand what it was that drew them to Star Wars in the first place, to recreate the moments. Arguably, J.J. Abrams tried to do that. He's really the only one, aside from Jon Favreau and the Mandalorian producers, who have tried independently to create new things in the Star Wars universe that feel like Star Wars. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.